Welcome to Charter California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance, and we are joined by Carol Liu. She's a member of the California State Senate. She is the chair of the Education Committee, and I am so pleased you are here because I want to speak about education.
Sure.
Ma'am, in my opinion, we are in the midst of a revolution as it relates to education funding. The way we fund schools in California, it was a very quiet revolution, but it's really changing. Am I hyperbolic? Am I off base?
No, I mean, you've got it right on.
Well, thank you. So let's talk about the changes.
Sure.
It's known as the local control funding formula. And what it does is for school districts that educate higher numbers of English language learners, of disadvantaged kids economically, and foster kids, those school districts will get more money. Query,
Yes.
is that the right approach?
It is an approach, and the legislature approved it this year.
It did.
Yes. So, you know, we have moved from funding that was based on categoricals,
Right.
and there was 40 different categories, and there was some base funding, et cetera, that people found it was very difficult to explain to the public how come Pasadena Unified got X number of dollars, and how come somebody from Beverly Hills got X number of dollars. So the governor did something very brave and very forward-thinking about making the system less complicated, more easy to explain, so people would understand why their school district got the money that they received.
So we now have under 10 categoricals.
Yes.
I think that's about right. Is it around 8?
Yes. Yes.
What about, you mentioned Beverly Hills, so I wanted to ask you about basic aid districts.
Yes.
Those are districts that don't take money from the state per se. If their property tax base is at a certain level,
Correct.
they can base their funding off that.
Right.
Is basic aid still around?
Yes.
So that has not changed.
That's not changed.
So let's go back to the general formula, this local
Okay.
control funding formula. If a school district has a particular student that falls into one of the 3 categories, they get a 20% bump.
Yes.
If that school district has 55% or more in those 3 categories, they get a 50% bump for a total of a 70% bump. That's a lot of bump.
It's a lot of fun.
What do you make of that? There's no doubt, I think it's fair to say, that children in those categories face challenges. Many states provide extra funding for those types of children. But is it a 70% differential?
Well, the legislature really debated that, and what was different this year in this whole process was that the governor presented this local control funding formula in his budget in January, as opposed to presenting or giving the legislature a bill. And so we really didn't get the legislature really didn't get an opportunity to discuss the policy outside of the budget discussion. And in the budget, it's only about money, not about policy. So what happened in the Senate was different, which is different than what happened in the Assembly. What happened in the Senate is the Senate came back with an alternative, SB 69,
Right.
which I was the primary author. And what we did in the bill, in that particular bill, is that we took a look at the comments that our school communities were saying about the pluses and minuses of the governor's presentation.
And I have to think that you were getting comments left, right, and center.
Yes.
Because you have some very well-heeled areas.
Right.
You have some more challenged areas.
Right.
And so I have to think you were really getting it from all
Right,
sides.
and I do, and I've got 13 different school districts in the 25th Senate District, and everybody's a little bit different. But the bottom line, and everybody agreed
Right.
that kids who come from more difficult environments need more resources. I mean, we all agreed.
Right.
It was a matter of how you got there. And the other thing that we heard from the field actually was that the base, because the governor was giving the baseline based on the current year budget. And the current year budget, of course, has seen tremendous cuts over the last 5 or 6 years. And, you know, the Senate would have liked to bring that base up to the 07-08 level.
And you did.
Well,
Am I getting to the punchline too quickly?
well, no, yeah. Well, we didn't quite do it that way, but but we wanted to really say you have to increase the base, not to have so much disparity among our kids. And this is not a proud place to be, regardless, because we're down at the bottom out of 50 states, 48th, 49th, and getting it to the 0708 was coming up to about the 42nd. I mean, we're not talking about excelling and coming in the top 10 of all states across this country. So, it was a fight among peanuts, so to speak.
But as I understand it, in the final bill,
yes.
we did get the base grant at least close to pre-recession levels.
Yes, yes.
So that was a big win
yes.
for those that were arguing for that position.
Right. Yes, yes. It's still not enough, but yes, we did. And the other thing that happened was that the formula, because the governor was originally at 35% for the supplemental grant and at 55%.
35. I think it was 35.
Yes. And so that was juggled a little bit to give more headroom for a little more bargaining to increase the base.
I want to talk, as we're seeing this revolution in education funding, there's another revolution going on in education, and that's Common Core.
Yes.
That's just a couple years off. That is the formula whereby 45 states are adopting new standards and really a new way of educating our students.
Right.
We're not going to see those fill in the bubble tests anymore. We're going to see you fill in the bubble, but then you have to defend your bubble.
Right.
That's a real change,
right.
Senator.
It is absolutely a real change, and what we are looking for is more creativeness in problem solving, more critical thinking as opposed to memorization. So, I mean, we switched topics here, but
it's still in the education
absolutely
realm.
And it's putting a lot of pressure on our schools, asking a lot of asking them to change their way of modus operandi, dramatically from where they've been.
But as I understand it, there is money having been set aside for Common Core implementation in the budget that was just passed.
Yes, the governor put in an extra $1.3 billion, something like that, to help with the Common Core transition. But I think he thinks that's going to be sufficient, and I think a lot of us think that's not going to be sufficient.
Is the money for teacher training? Is it for what is it for?
Well, it's for all those things. It's for professional development. It's for developing the materials. It's for also because the tests that we've all agreed to do is on computers, and so lots of our schools will need computers and broadband. I mean, lots of our schools, especially in rural areas, do not have broadband. Sure. It's not even accessible. So, I mean, we have many challenges ahead of us to get this going.
Is Common Core going to ramp up? Because I think about kids, like mine, for example, who are in the middle years, 4th and 6th grade. They've been learning one way. They're going to have to learn another way. These is for kids that are attending the public school system. How are they going to shift?
Oh, I think with some training with teachers and some new materials, I think that'll be less of a problem because, I really don't know, but it's not, but it's not memorization.
Right.
It is asking somebody to give me an answer and how did you get there, which, and so it's a process. It's problem solving. It's more questions than answers. And it's, not that your answer is not important,
no, of course.
But we're always interested in how you got there. And so, I mean, I think it's more challenging, but there's more give and take in that conversation rather than just filling in the bubble.
Right. So how have your constituents responded to the new paradigm, the new educational paradigm?
I have talked to my teachers, and they are...
You're a teacher, right?
I am a teacher,
yes.
Right. They're a little apprehensive because the test, California is a participant in Smarter Balance, a consortium of states that are using this particular method. And so there's one school district in my district, my 25th Senate district, that is testing the materials, testing the test, and that's South Pasadena. Yeah, so we'll see what happens.
Her name is Carol Liu, member of the California State Senate. I'm Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back on Charter California Edition.
Prior to the adoption of the local control funding formula, where did California rank in terms of per pupil spending? 47th, 48th, 49th, or 50th? In January 2013, California tumbled 2 more spots to the 49th in the nation in per pupil spending.
It's Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Our guest, Paul Little. He is the big CEO of the Pasadena Chamber of Commerce. He was on the Pasadena. No, you look great. He was on Pasadena City Council for how many years?
12.
12 years. Wow. And so he knows Pasadena pretty well. And so I want to talk to you about Pasadena most generally before we talk about a great series of events coming up. How is Pasadena doing economically? And I ask you that because it really is kind of a key city in LA County in the San Gabriel Valley.
Pasadena's doing pretty well. We're lucky in that we have a very diverse economy.
Right.
When you look back at the beginning of the recession, the first domino to fall was a major Pasadena company.
Which was?
IndyMac Bank.
Oh, yes.
Remember?
Oh, my.
And that was a few thousand jobs lost in Pasadena, but it's not like the auto industry collapsing in Detroit because we have a very strong, very diverse economy.
Rose Bowl.
And healthcare industry is very big in Pasadena, financial industry, engineering. So there's a broad base, not to mention the hospitality industry, which is very important in Pasadena and very lively and vital. You know, people, you know, it's not that people didn't feel the effect. And we have empty storefronts and we have empty office buildings and we have companies that are still closing, but it didn't have that kind of wholesale effect that it may have in other
Inland Empire, Central Valley.
Yeah, and we certainly didn't have the housing crash.
I also want to focus on cities and how cities are facing tremendous challenges vis-a-vis Sacramento. As you know,
our friends in Sacramento.
Yeah, well, yes. Redevelopment has been eliminated. Enterprise zones are all but eliminated. It's a new beast. Your mayor, Bill Bogart, recently traveled to Sacramento to speak about charter city reform that some would argue is not friendly to cities. How are cities, how are chambers of cities dealing with what some would call an assault on the tools that cities can use to incentivize businesses to stay or relocate into their boundaries?
Right, or expand and prosper.
All of it.
The redevelopment, the loss of redevelopment was a loss of an incredibly powerful economic development tool for cities. The ability to bring in people and incentivize things by buying down land costs, for example, or creating improvements that support a particular industry or a particular business is gone now. And at the same time, the ability to capture back the incremental increase in property value, the tax increment is gone. Now with the enterprise zones, and there were issues with enterprise zones. There's no question.
There were issues with redevelopment.
With redevelopment. But you know, in Pasadena, it's been a very important tool. Even though they have since left to Santa Monica, for example, eHarmony located in Pasadena, 2 floors of a brand new building, in part because they could take advantage of enterprise tax credits, enterprise zone tax credits. You know, they stayed for 5 years, and then the CEO moved, wanted the company closer to where they live, which happens. But there are many examples of enterprise zone tax credits being beneficial both for companies but also for potential employees. You know, I'm a not-for-profit, so I kind of am not in there, but if I am a business that is going to get a $25,000 tax credit over 5 years, if I hire a particular employee out of a particular category like a veteran or someone who's previously been unemployed, you know, several of those kind of categories, if I can do that, that is going to be incentivize me to hire an employee maybe when I wouldn't necessarily think about it, but also gives me a length of time to have that employee become a part of my company and give me the ability to expand my bottom line to be able to pay the full load of that employee.
So there's still some of that in the revamp of enterprise zones, not as much as there used to be. But one element is interesting. What they have done is, instead of providing these general tax incentives, they're providing sales tax credits to companies that work in manufacturing, in biotech. Could that help Pasadena? I mean, I think about Caltech, and I think about the companies that are within your midst.
Yeah, manufacturing, you know, we're not a manufacturing center anymore. The R&D tax credits could potentially help. We are a technology hub, we are a biotech hub, we are a medical research hub, so that could potentially help. What I'm not sure about are the caveats. You know, it doesn't have to be a particular kind of an employee.
Still be determined,
Yeah, that stuff TBD. You're not going to necessarily find a lot of returning veterans with the PhDs they need to do clinical research.
I want to ask you, as kind of a student of government, of politics, and now on the business side, why do you think this has been such a difficult time for cities vis-a-vis Sacramento? Why have cities become what some are arguing the whipping boy of the state government? I mean, the cities have really taken a hit during the last few years.
I think it has to do with money, quite frankly. Getting rid of redevelopment increased the general fund for the state of California.
It did.
Getting rid of enterprise zones is going to do the same thing. It's going to return a lot of those tax credits are not going to be no longer be tax credits, so that's going to be income for Sacramento. You know, and I think there's a little bit of arrogance to it all. You know, we're the state government, we know best.
But yet, so many of the legislators in Sacramento came from cities. They were city council members and mayors. They used these tools. So what happened? Say it, Paul. Say it.
Well, honestly, you know, there must be something in the water.
Could be.
You know, you go to Sacramento, you drink the water. All of a sudden, you're part of the herd. You know, you know, I will always thank Anthony Portantino, who's no longer in the Assembly, for being the one vote against the budget that killed redevelopment.
On the Democratic side.
Right, on the Democratic side. And he took a lot of heat for it, but he stood up.
Got a lesser office for it.
Yeah, but he stood up, you know, and I think that's, you know, to his credit.
Speaking of drinking.
Yep.
There's going to be a lot of drinking going on in Pasadena towards the end of this summer. It is the September, a celebration of the cocktail. You can be the judge of the best cocktails at restaurants throughout Pasadena from August 15th to the 26th. I am going to Pasadena.
Right.
Tell us about September.
It's actually August 15th through September 26th.
Did I say that correctly?
Yeah. Well,
okay.
But what we do is we essentially take the bracket challenges that people are used to in like March Madness, and we do it with cocktails and alcohol online. We have a very clever webmaster.
Clearly.
And what he did was he created a bracket challenge where we plug in cocktails, and so you start with 64 on August 15th. And the reason this lasts 6 weeks is because we
There's
certainly
64.
Yeah, exactly. You can't send people out to drink 64 cocktails in a week.
Why not?
Even in a week.
Come on.
So what we do is we encourage everyone to taste the cocktails, and then they go online and they can vote in the bracket challenge for the one they think is their favorite in the challenge. So if you've got Brad's Martini against Paul's Margarita, people can go taste them both and vote, and they can vote if they don't taste, obviously. But what the program does is then after the first section is 2 weeks. After the 2 weeks,
32.
The program automatically takes the winners and moves it down to the 32. So then we have 2 weeks of the 32. That gets whittled down to 16, and then we're a week of 16, a week of 8. We get down to 4 finalist cocktails, and what we're going to do is a taste of Pasadena at the Rose Bowl on August 26th.
September 26th. I got it wrong.
September 26th. And what we do is have those drinks available, and people who come to that event taste the drinks, and they vote for their favorite, and we pick the favorite cocktail of Pasadena for 2013 at that event, along with tasting food from 18 or 20 restaurants.
That event is from 6 to 9, September 26th at the Rose Bowl. Ticket price is pretty reasonable, $25 in advance, $30 at the door. You can buy tickets if you so desire, and I hope you do, at Pasadena-chamber.org. You, Paul Little, throw the best parties, and I hope to be able to participate in this party. You're kicking it off by celebrating Julia Child's birthday on August 15th and ending on September 26th at the Rose Bowl. Paul Little, thank you for joining us. He is the CEO of the Pasadena Chamber of Commerce. I'm Brad Pomerance. This is Charter California Edition.
Housing starts in California hit a low of 500,000 in 2009. At what level are they predicted to hit in 2015? UCLA Anderson forecast predicts that housing starts will reach 1.5 million in 2015 in the state of California.
Welcome back to Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We are now joined by Sue Evans. She is the Senior Director of Operations for Walden Family Services. And before we talk about Walden, I want to speak with Ms. Evans about a new law, and that will explain what Walden is doing. Talk to us about the concept of foster kids aging out and the California law that is now servicing their needs.
Well, in 2012, a new law came in, AB 12, that allowed foster youth to choose to stay in foster care between the ages of 18 and 21, those very critical years for foster youth, where there was a lot of homelessness, a lot of problems, and that allows those youth to stay in the foster care system but be treated as young adults, which is really important.
And I have done stories about foster kids who age out. And when you say there were a lot of problems, that's an understatement. I mean, foster kids were really struggling.
It is. It's absolutely tragic. I mean, shockingly, the figures are as high as 70% of those incarcerated had spent time in foster care.
And so this is truly a transitional period where they don't have their foster parental guidance, but they have supportive services. And Walden Family Services is one of the first agencies to provide what's known as transitional housing plus foster care.
That's correct.
Explain it.
This is a brand new program the state have developed, and it allows us to be funded to provide apartments that supervise living. So we provide the apartment for the young person, we provide the furnishings, we help them budget, we pay the lease, and we provide all the master's level case management services that go in.
And that's what's key, is those supportive services that are so critical to guarantee a productive life. Because when one is in foster care at the age of 15, 16, you know, foster care parents can be wonderful, but they may not be providing them with those life lessons, those life skills that they need. And so these services allow it. What I'd like to do, if we can, Sue, is meet one of the participants in the program that you described. Her name is Nora. Let's meet Nora, who's a beneficiary of Walden Family Services.
Hello everybody, my name is Nora. I'm 21 years old. I'm here today to tell you about how transitional housing has helped me. I was placed in foster care at the age of 8, and I emancipated at the age of 18. So when I heard about the opportunity to join THP+, I jumped at it. Being in foster care was hard because you never know where you may end up. And it was harder for me because I have 3 siblings, and we're never in the same place at the same time. We're always moved around, and we're never stable. Transitional housing gave me one location, and I was there always. I was able to focus mainly on school, and I didn't have to worry about, oh, I'm going to be moved next week, or I'm going to go somewhere next month. You know, I was able to just focus on strictly my school and my education. At that time, I was able to graduate from a medical assisting program. So I feel like if it was not for THP+, I wouldn't be where I am today. Because I still know people today that are my age that aren't where I am. The workers that they came in that visit us weekly gave us tips on how to budget, tips on how to cook healthy meals for our family, how to keep our household intact, and things of that nature. They also gave me many resources for my children because I have 2 wonderful children. It feels great that I can give them something that I didn't have. You know, they don't have to feel the pain and the hurt that I felt being in foster care, being moved from place to place. So being able to do something for them that I didn't have is a great feeling.
What a beautiful young woman, how incredibly well-spoken. You must be so proud of her as a graduate of one of your programs.
This young lady is actually working with us now to become an advocate for other young people. And we are training her and working with her to utilize her use of transitions in order to help other young people in the community.
How is it to have I'll call her a graduate if that's okay, a graduate be there for these young adults who are just entering these transitional programs? I have to think, I mean, she's beautiful, she's well-spoken, you know, all of the above. I mean, she got her head on her shoulders. Why is that important to the organization?
It's extremely important for other young people to see that people in their situation and other young people can have success. It is a far more powerful message to have a young person like Nora speaking with our other young people to say, you too can do this. This is what you can achieve by accepting some of the programs out there, working with the case managers, and Achieve. We're there to support and help you because we want you too to become productive community members.
Now, Walden are you exclusively in the Inland Empire?
We work in all of Southern California,
Oh.
in LA and San Diego as well.
Okay, so you have services throughout the Southern California
We do.
region. For our viewers who may be watching statewide, outside of Southern California, are these transitional housing programs plus foster care, are they proliferating throughout the state?
They are. They're available throughout the state of California.
And is there anything that we can do as viewers, as advocates, volunteer advocates for those that age out? Because, I mean, there are problems with foster care, but I feel as if the foster care system, it's operating nicely. Like you said, this is a new system. This is new, and so these individuals, they need those role models. Can we get involved in any way? Is that possible?
Some of the things that we can do is, one thing is that we still look for parents who would come forward and be prepared to maybe foster a teenager for a year or two and really be a good and great mentor to that young person.
They're not 18 yet, but they're close.
They're
And they
close.
need, and talk to me about that process, because it's one thing to foster a 2-year-old, a 5-year-old, even a 10-year-old. To foster a 16-year-old,
It's a challenge, but there are a lot of services available, and it's a desperate need that you may be able to foster a 16, maybe even an 18-year-old, and really help mentor them and give them a good role model, a good basis to move on towards, to keep a lifelong connection with. These young people often don't have family members for that lifelong connection. So to have someone who was their foster parent, someone that they can call at a weekend, call for some advice, go and have dinner with,
Right.
someone who's there for them, who believes in them.
I want to go back to Nora, if we may, and obviously she's an impressive young woman. She did mention she has 2 children, and God bless her and her children. I'm sure they're beautiful and remarkable. Nora, in a lot of ways, I hope it's okay I use this term, is lucky in that she is with a man, they've gotten married, and their life is marching forward. I have to think that early pregnancies is an issue that you face in the foster system. What is being done? What can be done on the issue of early pregnancy?
We work very much together with Planned Parenthood in the Inland Empire. We're very close partners with Planned Parenthood, and we also provide nurturing parenting classes to pregnant teens and young parents.
Because so often what will happen is a teen will be on the right path. They get pregnant, they have the child, and it becomes so very difficult to get their life in such a way. I mean, you have to deal with childcare, you have to deal with all the responsibilities of parenting. Does this transitional housing, plus foster care as we call it, offer services for someone like Nora who may have an infant from the age of 18 to 21 or even before?
Absolutely, and that's one of the main ways we're anticipating our services are used is for parenting young people. If they have 1 or 2 minors with them, we'll set them up in the apartment with their children.
Oh, really?
We will set them up with the crib, the high chair, the toddler
Really?
bed. We will then provide parenting classes because we want them to be good parents. We believe in them. We believe with the right skills and the right support
Can the
that they
father
can be
move
good.
in?
The father can move in if he has been in foster care as well.
So
Yes.
the system's still figuring out how best
Yeah.
to approach the system. I want to ask you, if I may, what has this job done for you? We know that the Noras of the world are doing wonderfully well, but I have to think for you, it brings something that you can't get. I mean, you have 4 children yourself, which is a blessing, of course, but talk to me about what you see when you're at work every day.
I think the amazing thing is, in the many years I've been doing this, is to see the success stories like Nora and many other young people like her. They'll come back and they'll tell you what they're doing. It may be that they've struggled, but they've managed to graduate high school, which is wonderful. It may be that they have their first job, that they have been a successful parent. All those, even the minor successes of passing their driving test, all those types of small successes are amazing, and we like to support and relish them.
And so often we hear the horror stories coming out of foster care, but the reality is, I would hope those are far few between, and Walden Family Services is doing its best to create more success stories. Her name is Sue Evans. She is the Senior Director of Operations for Walden Family Services. I'm Brad Pomerance. This is Charter California Edition.